JoJo. Alright. Topic of interest that is probably beneficial for many people at this time is when may it be necessary to move back? To move back. Alright. Now, keep in mind that our society has been constructed into believing forward movement is the best way. For the most part, right? We associate forward movement with improvement, growth, like betterment to a certain extent. We think that forward movement is a better option. And we view moving backwards sort of as like there's a problem, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, people do have problems. Like every day we're constantly trying to resolve an issue. So keep that in mind as well. Also, there are many planets retrograde right now, astrologically, right? So with that being said, a lot of that energy is gearing us towards being retrospective in a sense, right? So we should understand that sometimes it is actually necessary to move back. It's okay to move back sometimes, all right? I'm gonna give you a couple situations in which this may be necessary. So, the first situation in which moving back may be necessary, I'm gonna actually say home. Let's start with home, okay? It may be necessary to move back home. Many different scenarios for this, right? What is home? First of all, remember that spiritually speaking, home is first your physical vessels where your soul and your spirit resides. Besides that, then we need shelter. Generally speaking, shelter is something that we associate with family, okay? Family and shelter, family and home are connected. So when is it necessary sometimes to move back home? Sometimes it's necessary for people to move back with mommy and daddy. Sometimes it's necessary for people to move back with grandma. Sometimes it's necessary for people to move back with auntie, uncle, cousin, okay? Brother, sister. Because sometimes we get into situations that changed our expectations. So if you're just getting out of college, okay, a lot of people don't go anywhere after college. A lot of people don't get that job that they expected, and thus they can't afford a space for themselves, or at least a reasonable space that's going to be comfortable for them. So it may be necessary for you to move back home. All right, spiritual level, sometimes we are disconnected from ourselves. This is things like practicing meditation, yoga, mindfulness. You need to move back home, aka get in tune back with yourself, introspective, right? So sometimes it's necessary for people to actually move back home, and that's okay. You know, a different home is what I'm saying. Now, sometimes for people, home is connected to friends, but I feel like in most situations, home is where family is, because at the end of the day, family reconnects you back with your heritage, your true self, your roots in a sense. Okay? Now, another situation where it may be necessary to move back is in situations of work. Now, keep in mind, I don't know really if most jobs, careers allow for this kind of thing, so that's a little disclaimer, but sometimes we take on duties that we really didn't mean to have because it wasn't necessary for us, or it wasn't enough of a benefit for us. So for example, we can have a job, right? Then we can take on some other duties like a promotion for a higher incentive, right? And then we realize that it really wasn't much of a benefit in the long run, right? So, in that type of situation, maybe you should move back. Maybe you should speak to your boss, your manager. Maybe you should speak to someone in the department, or however your space of work, your work environment, is, and just simply say like, hey, you want to go back, like you want to go back to your old, to the other position that you had, you know. Now, going back to the disclaimer, you may have to speak to someone else to see if they want to take on those opportunities first, or else that could be a conflict for your whole entire work environment. But you know, you could look at this in a larger perspective, especially people that work for themselves. Maybe they decide to take on these extra duties that they felt like wasn't necessary. Maybe you want to move back, like you want to go back to what you were doing before, rather than whatever you've added to your schedule, whatever you added to your responsibilities. This is obviously if you have the opportunity to do so. I'm not trying to say that you have full control over things in that sense, but do understand you do have a good amount of control over the responsibilities that you have in this life. Thus, you should be able to have some say into what you want to do. But you also gotta be responsible about it. It's all about that balance, right? So, it may be necessary to move back in situations related to work, right? Work and home concepts are kind of connected too, because a lot of times people need to move back home because of work. Like their job isn't really what they expected it to be or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, or if somebody unfortunately had a job loss or a job change, you may need to move back home. I'll tell you this right now. The government will help you financially. They'll give you financial assistance, but you cannot depend on that, because as much as they're willing to help, they're willing to cut you off. So you got to keep that in mind too. I would never depend on governmental assistance. I used to get, how would you say it? I forgot exactly what it's called. It was like benefit, like government unemployment. There, that's what I'm talking about. I got unemployment back in like 2019, stuff like that. And like I said, they'll give it to you, but at any given time you could be cut off. It's not something to depend on. This is why it's important to have a sense of security, to have a space called home, to be able to go back to something, because this is going to improve your sense of security in life. You won't feel so worried and anxious knowing that if something were to happen, where would you go? Because your physical vessel needs to be protected. Even though this is your first home, it needs to be protected from the outside world. You need shelter. Okay? So, keep that in mind. Now, what other situations is necessary to go back, or it might be okay to move back? When is it okay to maybe move back? This is a popular one, people say. Relationships, getting back with your ex. Most people be like, no, why would you do that? Why would you go back to an ex? It didn't work out. There are situations where it could work out. I'm going to tell you how. One, you convinced yourself that you cannot get anyone better. You convinced yourself you cannot get anyone better. So there may be a strong sense of self-acceptance and a lack of desire for self-improvement. It may be okay to go back to an ex because you've decided to yourself that you don't want to improve to attract somebody that could be more suitable, or I won't say more suitable, but that could be better than what you had in the past. So once you've made that type of self-acceptance in life, you also have to kind of understand, should I get into that in this video? you have to understand you kind of made that sort of you kind of put that message out to the universe. You have to understand that, and that can affect other things in life too. But sometimes maybe some people have to do this. Like for some reason they got with somebody, okay, a partner, and for some reason they didn't work out, and then they realized that that's it. Like they don't intend on really doing anything to attract something else or attract someone better than that person. Or some people too, it could be a situation where they actually weren't their best selves when they were with that person, so there was a lack of appreciation for that relationship, and then it took some time apart to realize how much they actually did appreciate the relationship, and thus then you could be able to get back together. But most situations, either A, you decided that you don't want to improve yourself, and therefore you're not going to be able to attract anyone better, so therefore you should just go back to an ex. Or your ex-partner simply just manipulated you into thinking that you cannot get anything better, and you decide to believe it. It may be okay to go back to an ex. In those situations, it may be all right to go back to an ex-partner. All right. Now, another scenario. Would it be necessary to go back in this type of situation? All right. So, modern versus older technology. So it may be necessary to actually go back to old technology sometimes. Sometimes you didn't need all this extra added features. You just wanted the initial meaning for whatever it is. For example, smartwatch. Not everybody's meant for a smartwatch. You just want a watch for the time. Why are you going to get a smartwatch for? That's what I'm trying to say. It may be necessary to go back. Maybe you don't need that. Maybe you need to just go back and get you a regular watch. You don't need a smart TV if you're not using all those additional features. Then conflicts start to arise from all the things that you have that you didn't need. It's actually ironic because a lot of our phones, we don't use most of the features that's on our smartphones. You know, we actually don't use our tools for everything it has, is what I'm trying to say. It might be necessary to go back. I heard some people try and go back to flip phones. I don't know. You know, and not those new smart flip phones. I'm talking about old flip phones. All right. Some people, some of us want to go back. We don't even want all that stuff. We didn't want all these features. It makes things more complicated. New technology is beneficial for our society to do more, but it also adds more complications. Let's be honest. So sometimes the older technology, the way that we used to just use things in the past, sometimes it's just better for getting the job done quick. You know, you have one goal in mind, and that's it. Not all these extra things. It might be necessary to move back. It might be necessary to get you a regular TV, a regular watch, a regular phone, if you could find that today. You know? Not everything is about having a new gadget all the time anymore, to be honest with you. Now, some of these companies manipulate us into having no choice, right? That's another topic, but you know, some of us, you can't get the latest update if you didn't upgrade your technology. So it's like, what are you gonna do? You know? So in those situations, it might be necessary to move back. Let's think of something else. How about religion? Right? Some people change religions. Especially, there's always points of times in history. And here's how you know, actually, that it's important sometimes to go back. History. They say history repeats itself in some sort of way. So this is the reason why sometimes it is necessary to be retrospective, because you can understand more of what's happening now and what may happen by knowing or understanding the past. You know, you could protect and prepare yourself. So keep that in mind as well. In religion, a lot of times people convert religions and then they realize all along, like, the grass ain't greener on the other side, or they may realize that things are actually very much similar. Like, if you're dealing with organized religions, these things are very similar despite how the media portrays them as being very, very different. Okay, so you go and switch these religions, you find out that they're both extremely strict and disciplined. It's the same thing. Like, but I'm sure many people may actually go back, you know? Even spiritual stuff, you find out that spiritual people are just as dogmatic as like religious people. You may end up actually wanting to be Christian again, like Doreen Virtue, the person who makes the oracle cards and all that stuff. Like, she's a person who, I believe she grew up like Christian Catholic or something, then she became spiritual, then went back to being like Christian Catholic or whatever again. So it's like sometimes it's necessary to go back to the religious upbringing that you grew up in, right? And I'm not necessarily saying like that you have to like go back and like strictly practice these things. Sometimes it's okay to like maybe read a verse from the Bible or something. Like, it's okay, because it's expanding your consciousness, and you can able to connect things, and you'll see how everything is nicely connected, and we're not so much separate in that sense. So sometimes it's okay. It's okay to go back, you know, in cases like religion, like I mentioned, right? All right, so it may be necessary to go back and watch a movie, re-watch a movie, reread a book. They say that you'll always receive new information and content. You always pick up on something that you didn't pick up on before, because you already kind of know a little bit like what's happening because you already read it or watched it. So then now when you reread it or you rewatch something, you're getting a new perspective. You're picking up on new information and new details. And okay, so some people will be like, okay, who cares though? Well, you know, these companies like Audible and audio, I don't know, all the audio books, all this stuff, you know, subscriptions, they influence us to constantly be picking out a new set of content. There's new set of content in what you've already seen, you've already watched. That's what I'm trying to say. Nothing wrong with getting new content though, but I'm saying like in times where you can start to feel like it's time to be retrospective, it's time to kind of like go back, you know, to a certain situation. A lot of y'all will go back into something that wasn't good, it doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. Go back to the things that actually worked, that you could actually go back to. Don't go back to situations that worked once, no longer worked, expecting it to work. That's what I'm saying, alright? That's what I'm trying to say, alright? It's necessary to sometimes go back and make amends. You notice that people that constantly have some sort of drama or conflict with people but never gets resolved, so they just keep attracting the same situations in different scenarios. Just go back and make amends. The problem is the ego. The ego blocks people from actually doing what they want moving forward, because they don't know how to just go back and make amends sometimes. I'm not saying like apologize to people just because you want a new job. No, because your intentions are messed up. Do it because you want to clean yourself from sorrow or guilt. I don't care if you think out loud or consciously that you don't feel guilty. The subconscious mind is different. You think that you don't care, but your subconscious does. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is where things like balancing the mind, being meditative and whatnot, this is what helps things like the subconscious mind to prevent certain things like that. But most people don't do this, so they don't get it, that they constantly think, whatever, I don't want to do this or blah 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 anymore. But you don't get your subconscious says otherwise, and this starts to block you from achieving certain goals in life. So you have to be able to sometimes, I know situations is difficult sometimes, but at least you did your part. And then don't allow the ego to conflict you from your maturity, from your improvement, So that's something that is important. Maybe it's good to go back temporarily. It doesn't have to mean you have to stay there. You don't have to make amends and force yourself to connect with somebody. Sometimes it can bring that, but sometimes it's just for you to feel a sense of relief from simply just forgiving and asking for forgiveness, because you getting that weight off of your body, your energy. You're releasing that guilt, right? So sometimes it's necessary to go back and just make amends, Keep in mind that I am not necessarily favoring moving back, and I don't favor moving forward. I favor the divine timing of things. I think sometimes there is I feel like sometimes it is necessary to actually move back, right? I have a moon in Cancer, even though it's on that kind of like on a cusp. Other people say it wouldn't be. I feel like it is. If you don't put in my birth time, you won't be able to see that I'm a moon in Cancer. It'll say I'm a moon in Gemini. So that's enough for me to kind of have that in between with my moon. But somebody with a moon in Cancer is going to be more gravitated towards looking at the past and having like a sense of nostalgia, whatever it be, and maybe putting that energy out there for others, whatever. But also my other placements allow me to be able to want to move forward and seek towards the future, right? And then I also have placements that make me very much in the now and very much of or maybe to be like a little bit more practical or whatever. So I get it. Trust me, I get it. And there's just times when it is okay to be a little bit more retrospective. It is okay to kind of look at history, or it's okay to kind of, look at things that was in the past in a sense, because it just help us to sort of move forward. Believe it or not, sometimes it's ironic like that. Moving forward requires us to actually take a step back sometimes, and it's okay. Another scenario where it might be necessary to move back is things like education, right? Sometimes we're thinking about going back to get an education. You hear about people that are much older that go back to get that education. Remember that our disciplines generally stick with us. It's difficult for that to go away. So it's something that can help build your self-esteem, and it's also something that can help you to be successful in life, because it can obviously help you get a career, or it can just be a benefit to whatever you're doing in life. So going back to get an education sometimes may be something that is a benefit or useful for you, for others, whatever, you know, if it has to do with your work or whatever it is you're trying to do. So those are mainly the situations in which you may want to actually move back. You know, keep in mind that there's no right or wrong way. At the end of the day, our collective society, our life, this world we live in is structured upon this timeline that we're uncertain of. Some say, is this, is that, like, you know, there's different sayings and stuff. I don't have too much Sagittarius in my chart, so I don't do all those, like, I feel like a lot of Sagittarius have like sayings like, oh, something's not linear, it's blah blah blah, whatever. Like, at the end of the day, we know that there's the past, present, the future. Okay, however way you want to structure it. So we're living in it. So how are you going to completely negate one? Okay, too much in the future, you have a lack of memory. And these memories construct, you know, your emotions and physics. Even if you're not able to remember, again, your subconscious does. You're just not aware of it. So it's good to balance between these, you know, different time zones of life. So if you like, you could like, comment, share, subscribe. I have new music that I'm working on for I could say a tape, but it's probably like an extended play called Garden of Eden. Right? This is actually inspired by the Lover's card as well as the, I guess, yeah, the Lovers, maybe. Most of my music is inspired by tarot, astrology, and psychology and whatnot, so a little bit of philosophy here and there. So keep that in mind. The newest song I have out is called Yin Games. No, I have not added any explanations or anything to my website yet, because that song will probably be on the Garden of Eden EP. So once I have everything together, then all the information will be on my website. So yeah, you know, that's basically what I'm going to talk about. I'm hoping to be able to come out with my merch line again soon. We'll see what happens. I did have a merch line also. It was Artless Essentials, not just my jewelry, but I had like t-shirts that said like gratitude to my attitude, manifest blessings and all this stuff. But I temporarily, or maybe permanently, have closed down that merch line due to financial situations. It just wasn't enough profit for me to maintain. So we'll see what happens. So yeah, that's all for now. Much love to everyone. Thank you.